The storm raged outside, thunder rumbling like a beast awakening from a slumber, and as the winds howled through the trees, it felt as if the world were unraveling. Inside, Sarah sat on her bed, cocooned in her blanket, staring at the door in a mix of anticipation and dread. She hadn't even unpacked her luggage from her last trip home. Now everything felt foreign. She inhaled deeply, feeling a wave of claustrophobia wash over her. This room, the one she was supposed to share a lifetime of memories within, now felt like a prison. The walls were adorned with faded floral wallpaper that clashed with her modern sensibilities. It was as if the house itself was taunting her, reminding her of all the things she had lost when her mother remarried. Her phone pinged with a message, pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. It was from her stepbrother, Jake. He had sent a goofy meme about a dog that looked like it was plotting world domination. A smile tugged at her lips. Despite everything, they had found a way to connect over their mutual love for animals, particularly the stray dog they had rescued just days ago. Jake had been the one to suggest they help the poor creature, and together they had coaxed it out from the shadows of an alleyway, its matted fur reflecting the light of their flashlights like it was riddled with stars. Max, she had named it on a whim, and the name seemed to fit perfectly. The dog had not left her side since, forever loyal and eternally grateful. But here she sat, waiting for the inevitable knock on the door that never seemed to come. Jake had promised he'd come check on her, but part of her couldn't help but feel a pang of anxiety. Would she ever fit in here? Would they ever truly bond as siblings? Or would this awkward arrangement always feel like a haphazard puzzle whose pieces refused to click? Knock, knock, came a light rap at her door, and her heart skipped a beat. It was Jake, his deep voice cutting through the tension in her chest. She opened the door to find him standing there, his dark hair slightly tousled, an amused grin plastered on his face. "I thought I'd find you huddled in here with a box of tissues and a tub of ice cream," he teased, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Sarah rolled her eyes but couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. "As if I'd never sink that low," she replied, crossing her arms playfully. Max, oblivious to their banter, trotted over and flopped down at Jake's feet, looking up at him expectantly. The sight of the dog's wide eyes and wagging tail was enough to dissolve the tension in the room. Sarah knelt beside Max, scratching behind his ears, and in that moment, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. "You know, if only we could all be as carefree as him," Jake said, watching Max with admiration. "Life would be a lot easier, wouldn't it?" "Totally," Sarah agreed. "But I guess that's what makes it interesting. The drama, the messy stuff." She hated how her voice trembled slightly, betraying her inner turmoil. She glanced up at Jake, whose expression had turned serious. "Sarah," he began cautiously, "I know it's been weird since our parents got together. It's a big change for both of us." "Yeah, I guess." She brushed her hair behind her ear, trying to evade the weight of the conversation they were about to have. But Jake had a way of drawing her in, making it impossible to shy away from the truth. "I just want you to know," he continued, "that it's okay to feel like this. I'm confused, too." The admission caught her off guard. Admitting confusion felt like stepping into an abyss. "Really? You feel confused?" "Of course. It's not exactly easy becoming a part of a new family. But hey, at least we have Max. He's kind of like our anchor." Jake laughed, but the sound didn't mask the sincerity behind his words. "Right. Our fluffy little anchor." Sarah chuckled, feeling lighter. This moment, this shared understanding, was the silver lining in her chaotic new life. She wondered if maybe, just maybe, Jake understood her more than anyone else did. "Why don't we take him for a walk? Clear our heads?" he suggested, a spark of enthusiasm lighting his eyes. "Are you sure?" "It's pouring out there," she said, frowning at the ominous clouds gathering in the twilight sky. "Yeah, who cares? Dogs love rain. Plus, I have an umbrella," he replied, flashing her an inviting smile that made her heart flutter uncomfortably. It was bewildering how quickly one smile could change everything, how it could flip her perspective on the day, on her relationship with him. "All right, let me grab my jacket," Sarah replied, the tension easing further as she stood up to prepare. The prospect of spending time with Jake, of stepping outside of her self-imposed prison, pulled her out of her thoughts. Within minutes, they bounded down the stairs, Max leading the way, his enthusiasm infectious. The moment they stepped outside, the cool rain hit her skin, invigorating and liberating. Sarah couldn't remember the last time rain felt this freeing. It was almost a blessing in disguise. As they walked, they chatted about everything and nothing, school, ridiculous movies they both loved, and even a few embarrassing moments from their pasts. Jake had a knack for making her laugh, and soon she was giggling, the sound echoing against the heavy rain. Suddenly Max stopped and darted off, chasing a squirrel that had ventured too close. "Come back, you furry distraction," Jake called after him, laughing as they both took off after the pup. Sarah felt a thrill of exhilaration. Here they were, two unlikely partners in adventure, united by their love for this playful creature. As they caught up, Jake's shoulder brushed against hers, and for a fleeting second, Sarah felt an electric spark. This was more than just a walk, it was their own little world against the backdrop of the storm, filled with possibilities and unexplored emotions. "Max, you really know how to bring us together, huh?" she joked, watching the dog bound through puddles. "Yeah, he's the glue," Jake replied, his voice light, but his eyes filled with something deeper, something Sarah couldn't quite interpret. The rain slowed, and for a moment, the world felt still. She glanced at Jake, his face illuminated by flashes of lightning, capturing a fragment of time she wished could last. It was as if the sky above them echoed the chaotic symphony playing in her heart. Maybe this unexpected storm was the blessing she didn't know she needed, a way to bond them, to weave their lives together in spite of the outside chaos. And as the rain fell gently around them, in that moment, Sarah began to realize that just maybe, she was beginning to find her place in this new family, starting with the bond blossoming between her and Jake. Secrets in the shadows. The sun had started to peek through the remnants of the storm clouds, casting a golden glow across the yard. Sarah sat on the porch steps, a steaming mug of tea cradled in her hands. Max lay at her feet, his tail thumping lazily on the wooden deck as he basked in the warmth of the new day. Life felt different today. There was a hint of promise in the air, a fragile hope that perhaps things would get better. "Mind if I join you?" Jake's voice broke through her reverie. She looked up to see him approaching, his hair still damp from the rain. The way he wiped his brow with the back of his hand sent a flutter through her stomach. It was odd how a simple gesture could appear so charming. "Of course not," she said, motioning for him to sit beside her. They fell into a comfortable silence, sipping their drinks and watching the world come alive around them. Birds began to sing, and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze amplified the tranquility of the moment. But deep inside, Sarah felt the stirrings of confusion again. The bond they had formed during their rainy adventure was undeniable, yet the more she reflected on it, the more complicated it became. They weren't just step-siblings now. They were friends sharing secrets, facing the storms of their lives together, and as much as she cherished that connection, there was a nagging fear at the back of her mind. What did it all mean? "Hey, I've been thinking," Jake began, breaking the silence. His fingers curled around his mug as he stared off into the distance, looking more serious than she'd ever seen him. "I know blending families isn't easy. We both have baggage." She glanced at him curiously. "Baggage?" "Yeah, emotional stuff from before. I mean, I don't want to dive into it, but I think we should talk about it at some point," he said, his tone earnest. His words hit her like a wave crashing against a shore, a mix of vulnerability and fear. Did she want to share her past? The anxiety that had haunted her since their parents had tied the knot? Like what? What do you want to talk about? Like family, expectations? Maybe what we want out of this new arrangement? He turned to face her, his dark eyes probing her soul. She felt a lump forming in her throat. Was she ready to talk about the insecurities that gnawed at her? "I guess I'm just trying to figure out where I fit in," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The corners of Jake's mouth turned up slightly in understanding. "I get that. It's weird for me too. I sometimes feel like a stranger in my own home." Max, sensing their shift in mood, nudged Sarah with his nose, as if urging her to continue. "It's just, our parents got together so suddenly. I didn't have time to adjust, 1 minute I had my own life, and the next I'm thrown into this complex web of family ties. Totally." I feel the same way. It's like we're expected to just blend without missing a beat, Jake replied, leaning closer to her, their shoulders brushing against each other. For a moment, she felt blissfully connected to him, as if they shared an invisible thread binding their experiences. It's hard to accept that things have changed forever, she sighed, looking down at her mug. Yeah. Jake paused, then added, At least we can rely on each other, right? We can figure it out together. The warmth of his words comforted her, but an inkling of hesitation tugged at her heart. It was one thing to share secrets. It was another to navigate the intricate emotions bordering on something more. Yeah, together, she echoed, forcing a smile. As the morning wore on, errors of the past began to surface in her mind. A year ago, life had felt so certain. She had her friends, her routine, a life without the unexpected chaos that had entered as abruptly as thunder cracking open a quiet night. Could she truly adjust to this new reality? Want to take Max for another walk? We can talk more if you feel like it, Jake suggested, breaking her reverie. Sure, let's do it, she replied, hoping the movement would lift her spirits. They set off down the familiar paths that had become a part of their daily routine. But this time, the atmosphere felt heavier, laden with unspoken truths. The sun had risen fully now, almost too bright, and it made Sarah squint as they walked. At first, they talked about trivial things, school, family pets, and upcoming vacations, but gradually, the conversation shifted back to the emotional depth they had started to explore. Do you ever feel like you're living in two worlds? Jake asked suddenly, his gaze fixed forward. Like you have this new family dynamic, but you're still tied to your old life? Yes, exactly. I feel like I'm constantly pulled in two directions, she responded passionately. Part of me longs for the stability of my old life, while another part knows I need to embrace this change. The silence fell again, thicker now. Sarah could sense Jake thinking deeply, and she couldn't help but wonder what was brewing beneath his calm surface. What do you think makes a family? He asked, his voice more introspective than she'd ever heard it. She considered it for a moment. I think it's about shared experiences, love, and support. It's about knowing you can rely on someone no matter what. Jake nodded slowly, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, an unvoiced question. A lingering hesitation. Do you think we can be that for each other? What do you mean? She turned to look at him, searching his face, trying to decipher the deeper layers to his words. I mean, with our parents getting married, we're family now, right? We should support each other, but... He hesitated, biting his lip, and for a brief second it was as if he were wrestling with something monumental. But what? She pressed gently, her heart racing. Sometimes I wonder if it goes beyond that. Like if we could actually be closer than just step-siblings. Her breath caught in her throat. Did he really mean what she thought he meant? She could feel the electric air around them shift like an invisible current, binding them in the moment. But she hesitated, not wanting to misinterpret him, and not wanting to risk complicating their already fragile relationship. Jake, that's a big leap, she finally said, trying to keep her voice steady. I know it sounds crazy, but I just feel like we have this connection. It's different from what I have with my other friends or even my other family members. His eyes locked onto hers, intense and searching. And maybe we're just relating because we're in such a weird situation right now, she replied, attempting to ground the conversation in reality, to shield herself from what felt like the beginning of something overwhelming. Maybe, but I don't think it's just that. I get you. I care about you, Sarah. His honesty hung in the air, unfiltered and raw. Her heart raced, a battle of confusion and excitement swirling within her. This was not the conversation she had anticipated. I care about you too, but, he prompted gently, the warmth in his eyes unwavering. It's complicated. We're family now, right? Shouldn't we be careful? Careful? Jake chuckled, but his laughter was tinged with nervousness. You mean just ignore the bond we share? Pretend that connection doesn't exist? No, not at all. I don't know how to navigate this. She sighed, exasperated, frustration woven into her words. Look, he said softly, stepping closer, the distance between them narrowing. We're both struggling with this change. I just want to make sure we don't lose touch with each other, not when we have something worth holding on to. At that moment, beneath the branches of the trees they stood under, it felt as if time stood still. The world faded away, leaving just the two of them, two young souls tangled in a web of shifting family dynamics, and perhaps an emerging friendship that promised to be more. In that instant, Sarah felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She was terrified but exhilarated simultaneously. This connection they had forged felt rare and precious. Could she allow it to blossom, or was it a path too fraught with risks? As Max returned, wagging his tail with exuberance, the moment fragmented, shattering her contemplation like a mirror. The world had come crashing back, and with it, the reality of their circumstances. "Let's head back," she said, a tinge of sadness coloring her voice. Jake's expression shifted to one of understanding, yet disappointment lingered in his eyes. "Yeah, let's." As they turned to walk back home, the tension remained, heavy between them. A silence filled with the weight of every unsaid thought, a secret yet to be fully unraveled. The storm may have passed, but another one loomed on the horizon, ready to test the fragile bond they were building. A night of discovery. The evening air was thick with the smell of rain-soaked grass as Sarah and Jake returned to the house, their earlier conversation lingering like a cloud overhead. Inside, the atmosphere felt stifling. The walls around them almost hummed with unspoken words, and Sarah could sense that the delicate thread tying their thoughts together had grown frayed. "Want to watch a movie or something?" Jake suggested, flicking on the living room lights. The space was cozy, with soft cushions and a large screen that looked inviting, yet Sarah couldn't shake off the weight of their earlier discussion. "Sure," she replied, trying to keep her voice light. Inside, however, she wrestled with the feelings that swirled within her like a tempest. The prospect of spending more time with Jake stirred both excitement and anxiety in her chest. She settled onto the sofa, tucking her legs beneath her. Jake grabbed the remote and sat beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth radiating. As he scrolled through the selection of movies, Sarah bit her lip, thinking how strange it was to feel both comforted and unnerved by him all at once. "Let's watch something funny," he suggested, in an attempt to lighten the mood. "How about that ridiculous action comedy we saw trailers for?" "Sounds good," she replied, forcing a smile as he pressed play. As the movie started, the banter on screen barely filtered through Sarah's thoughts, her focus drifting back to their conversation. Jake's presence beside her felt significant, and her heart raced as they occasionally brushed against one another, the contact electric and thrilling. Midway through the film, Sarah found herself laughing more than she had in weeks, and Jake's easy laughter was contagious. Yet the tension from earlier lingered just beneath the surface. Each time she dared to glance at him, those dark eyes held a depth that both excited and intimidated her. "Did you ever think it would be like this?" Jake asked suddenly during a quieter moment in the film, his tone growing serious again. "What do you mean?" she replied, her heart pounding as she turned to face him fully. "We've been thrown together in this big, unexpected family mix. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm living in a sitcom, everyone awkwardly trying to figure out where they fit in." Sarah laughed lightly, relieved to break the heaviness, but his gaze was intense. "Yeah, I guess it feels a bit like that. Except we're not really sure what the next season will be like, right?" "Exactly," he said, grinning. "Each episode is a cliffhanger. We just don't know if we're going to get renewed for the next one." The shared moment broke something in hair barrier she'd been trying to maintain. Their laughter hung in the air, accompanied by a warmth that enveloped them like a security blanket. "Okay, but if this is a sitcom, who are we?" she teased, trying to keep the mood light despite the underlying currents of their conversation. "Good question. I think I might be the goofy best friend that provides comic relief," he said, striking a silly pose. "Then I must be the reluctant heroine," Sarah shot back, rolling her eyes with a playful smile, always caught in an awkward love triangle but pretending it doesn't exist. Jake chuckled, but the laughter turned to silence as their eyes locked, and Sarah felt the temperature rise between them. The laughter faded into the background, the screen flashing scenes that suddenly felt insignificant. "Sarah," Jake began, his voice quieter now. "I really appreciate that we can talk about all this stuff. Not everyone gets it, you know? I'm glad too," she admitted, her heart racing. "But sometimes, I wonder if we're getting tangled in our own lines." "I think that makes it exciting," he replied thoughtfully, his voice low and sincere. And just like that, the door swung wide open to an unexpected vulnerability, a shift she hadn't anticipated. Max, sensing the growing tension, nestled closer to Sarah, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing around them. They continued watching the film, but the tension between them simmered, a strung bow ready to snap. When Jake's hand brushed against hers, every nerve ending ignited into an orchestra of longing. There was a gravity in the room, a hush where words were unnecessary. "Hey, do you want to go get some ice cream?" Jake suggested suddenly, shattering the moment but sparking a new excitement as he stood up. "I think we could use something sweet, right?" "Sure, I could go for that," she replied, finding herself grateful for the distraction. The kitchen was dimly lit when they arrived, the refrigerator humming softly as Jake opened it and pulled out a tub of chocolate ice cream. "The good stuff," he proclaimed, grabbing 2 spoons from the drawer. "We always told each other we'd get some when we had rough days." Sarah chuckled, grateful for the familiar tradition, as she took a seat at the kitchen counter. "And this counts as a rough day?" "Only if we make it one," he replied, his eyes sparkling as he handed her a spoon. The ease of their shared history settled back in. Nothing else mattered for that moment. As they indulged in their sweet treat, the chatter flowed easily. They joked about silly childhood memories, the goofy things they went through before their parents met. The sweetness of the ice cream melded with the warmth of their camaraderie, and for the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a lightness she hadn't thought possible. But as they finished their dessert, the air grew heavy with expectation again. Jake's expression changed, becoming thoughtful as he put down his spoon, watching her intently. "Sarah, I need to be honest with you about something." Her heart raced. "What is it? You can tell me anything." "I can't stop thinking about our earlier conversation, how you feel about being family now." He leaned closer, his voice earnest. "It's hard for me to ignore what we have, our connection. It feels different." A lump formed in her throat as she met his gaze. "Jake, just hear me out," he interrupted gently. "What if we didn't have to ignore it? What if we embraced it? I mean, what's wrong with being close, really close?" The air was electric, charged with emotion. Sarah's mind raced as she struggled to find the right words. "Every instinct tells me it's reckless," she finally said, hoping to temper the storm brewing between them. "Maybe," he replied, his voice dipping to a whisper. "But what if it's the best thing that's ever happened to us?" The clock ticked in the background, marking the seconds that felt suspended in time. Her heart raced at the possibility lying before them, a crossroads pregnant with potential. "I just don't want to ruin what we have," she said softly, gazing into his eyes where the flickers of uncertainty danced. "We won't if we're careful. Just give me a chance to show you there's more to this. We can take it slow. Just promise me we won't push each other away." Sarah took a deep breath, and for a moment, everything seemed to fade away, the doubts, the fears, the lines that felt impossible to cross. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? She hesitated, lost in the weight of the decision she faced. Her heart screamed for connection, for understanding, but her mind held back, shackled by fear. "I know it's a risk," Jake continued, searching her eyes, "but I'd rather be close to you and navigate those risks than let this chance slip away." Just then, Max barked, breaking the spell, and the moment released its grip on their hearts. They both looked down at the dog, who was somehow an adorable distraction, yet their eyes met again, igniting the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface. "Okay," Sarah finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's just take it one step at a time." Jake's expression shifted to one of relief, yet the shadow of something deeper lingered still. "One step at a time sounds good. Together." She nodded, feeling the weight of shared secrets, new possibilities, and expectations in the air. As they cleaned up the remnants of their dessert, a different kind of uncertainty loomed, but there was also a thrilling sense of discovery that danced just beyond their reach. Unbeknownst to them, A storm wasn't just on the horizon. It was brewing within them. An emotional tempest waiting to be unleashed, poised to test the bonds they were forming in a world filled with tangled family ties and uncharted emotions. The growing tension, the next few days unfolded in a whirlwind of both excitement and confusion. Sarah and Jake grew closer, sharing laughter, secrets, and moments that felt increasingly intimate. Yet with every shared glance and playful touch, the tension between them escalated, an exhilarating force that neither could ignore. Their conversations flowed easily, each day becoming an adventure in emotional exploration. They'd find themselves talking late into the night, the world outside forgotten, lost in each other's eyes. Yet there were also moments steeped in uncertainty as they navigated the complexities of their relationship. One evening, as they settled down for another movie night, the atmosphere felt charged with something unspoken. Max lay sprawled across the couch, a furball oblivious to the world, and Sarah could feel the heat radiating from Jake as he shifted next to her. "Want to pick a movie?" Jake asked, trying to break the tension with a casual tone. "Something lighthearted?" She nodded but felt the pulse of tension growing as she swiped through the selections. Every choice felt insignificant, as if the true story unfolding between them overshadowed any film they might watch. "Maybe we should just skip the movie," she blurted out suddenly, her heart racing as she realized her own boldness. "I mean, there's so much we haven't talked about yet." Jake turned to her, his eyes widening in surprise. "Yeah, like what?" "Like Thesis." She gestured between them, her heart pounding. "What we're becoming. I don't want to ignore it any longer." He shifted, leaning toward her, his expression serious. "I know, but it's confusing, right? I mean, we've become so close, yet we can't really talk about it like a normal relationship." "Exactly," she replied, feeling relief wash over her. "Are we allowed to feel this way? I mean, with the whole blended family thing?" His brows furrowed, deep in thought. "I think we can. But we need to be careful. It's hard to know where the line is drawn in a family like ours." Just then, Max jumped up, barking excitedly, and Sarah laughed, grateful for the interruption. "See? Even Max thinks we should talk about it." She reached down to ruffle Max's fur, grateful for the laughter he brought into the room. "Okay, but what do we do about it?" Jake asked, his tone somber once more. Sarah took a deep breath. "Maybe we define what we want from this, whatever this is. Can we be friends or step-siblings, or are we more?" Jake leaned back, contemplating her words. They cocooned themselves in the warmth of shared confidences, yet the air crackled with the electricity of something deeper. "We could try to navigate it, you know," he said after a moment, sounding almost hesitant. "Just be open and see where it leads us, but we have to promise to keep communication open." "I promise," she agreed, her heart throbbing in her chest. But as they continued to talk, the underlying tension resurfaced, ebbing and flowing like the tide. They were forming an unspoken bond, one fraught with complications and deeply personal implications. Days turned into a week, and Sarah found herself caught in a storm of emotions. Each moment spent with Jake felt like walking a tightrope, exhilarating yet terrifying. They began to slip into casual routines, but the weight of their conversations loomed large over everything. One afternoon, as they hung out in the backyard, Sarah lay back on the grass, gazing up at the sky. Jake sprawled beside her, their shoulders touching as they soaked up the sun. She could feel the warmth radiating not just from the sun, but from the connection that coursed between them. "This is nice," he said, his voice low. "Just being here, together." "Yeah, it really is," she responded, reveling in the ease of the moment. Yet, as they continued to lie side by side, she couldn't shake the thought that something was changing. As the days melded into one another, Sarah noticed a shift in Jake. He seemed more withdrawn, distracted, as if something heavier rested on his shoulders. She was aware of the subtle changes in his demeanor, the way his laughter didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. One evening, after a particularly long day, Sarah found herself unable to quell the worry building inside her. "Jake?" she began tentatively, choosing her words carefully. "Is everything okay?" Jake was silent for a moment, and she could sense a storm brewing within him. "Yeah, it's complicated." The tension between them thrummed in the air, thick and palpable. "You can talk to me, you know that, right?" He sighed, looking away. I'm worried about this. About us. I mean, what if it ends badly? What if nobody understands?" He looked vulnerable in that moment, something that made Sarah's heart ache. "I'm scared too, Jake. I don't want to ruin what we have, but running away from it won't make it disappear." Jake turned to her, his eyes fierce yet filled with uncertainty. "What if we take a step back? Can we just pretend it's normal? Just friends?" Those words hit her like a punch to the gut. She felt a wave of hurt wash over her. "You want to pretend? After everything?" "I don't want to lose you!" he exclaimed, his voice betraying the storm brewing within. "But I also don't want to ruin our family." She felt his fear echoing in her own heart. "But if we don't confront it, are we really going to be okay? We can't bury it forever." Silence dominated the space between them, a chasm filled with unvoiced words. Sarah swallowed hard, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Maybe you're right," Jake said finally, his voice quieter. "But I'll need time to think. Can we try to keep things simple for now, just for a little bit?" "Okay," she replied, though her heart sank. "If that's what you need." That night, Sarah lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, wrestling with her emotions. She felt as if they stood on a precipice, a choice that could change everything. The world outside was silent, but inside her, a tempest raged. The next day felt unreal, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words, and Jake's attempts to act casual fell flat. They moved through the day like shadows of themselves, laughter replaced with awkwardness. That evening, as dusk settled over the house, they found themselves in the living room. A stillness hung in the air, an unbearable weight that threatened to drown them both. "Do you really think we can just go back to how things used to be?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. "I don't know," Jake admitted, the vulnerability in his tone disarming. I want to, but I think it might be too late for that." Just then, the door burst open, and their mother walked in, a cheerful voice breaking through the tension. "Hey kids, what do you think about dinner?" The interruption felt both like a relief and a curse. Sarah's heart raced as her mother moved about the room, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside. "I think we should order pizza," Jake replied, his eyes darting towards Sarah as if searching for some semblance of agreement. "Pizza it is!" their mother exclaimed, excitedly opening her phone to place an order. As they sat together, the casual atmosphere felt almost surreal. Sarah caught Jake's gaze, and in that moment, the weight of their earlier conversation settled heavily between them. They both knew things were shifting, and everything felt precariously balanced. After dinner, as they settled back into the living room, a tense silence fell over them once more. The room felt heavy, as if the walls were closing in on them. With the TV on, the distraction faded into the background as their attention drifted. All Sarah could focus on was Jake, his expression serious as he turned toward her. "Sarah," he began, his voice low, "I've been thinking more about everything." "Me too," she replied, her heart racing as she braced herself for what was to come. "I don't want to pretend anymore," he said, his eyes locked onto hers. "I feel like we're running away from something real, something that could be amazing." In that moment, the air thickened, a tempest of emotions swirling around them. She felt hope bloom within her, counteracted by fear. What would they do? Would they finally embrace what lay beneath all the layers of uncertainty? But just as the world felt poised to crack open, the doorbell rang, piercing through the gravity of the moment. Both sat frozen, then Jake let out a nervous laugh. "Pizza!" The tension snapped like a taut string. They glanced at each other, amusement creeping into their expressions, yet the underlying reality still lurked in the shadows. As Jake moved to get the door, Sarah took a deep breath, a battle raging inside her. She knew they were on the verge of something pivotal, but would they really take that leap together? As Jake returned, pizza box in hand, the room brightened momentarily with laughter and casual banter, yet the gravity of their unspoken truths lingered just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to rise again. As the evening unfolded, Sarah's heart raced in anticipation of what lay ahead. Would they confront the realness of their emotions, Or would the external world continue to pull them away? Only time would tell if this tale of discovery would forge a new path, or leave them caught in a storm yet to come.